All right, today we're going to talk about something huge. We're diving into how India is completely rewriting its rulebook for construction, engineering its buildings to stand up to some of the most powerful forces on the planet. We're talking about building for the big one.
Now, take a look at this. This isn't just some map. It's basically a rap sheet of seismic force. Every single one of those markers from the Indian Meteorological Department, that's a major earthquake. You've got the monster 8.6 magnitude Assam-Tibet quake in 1950, the devastating one in Gujarat in 2001. The message here is crystal clear. India sits on some incredibly active ground.
So, this brings up a massive, fundamental challenge for an entire country's worth of engineers and architects, right? How do you actually build safely on land that refuses to stay still? It's a question that has driven decades of research, and tragically, it's one they've had to revisit after every major disaster.
To really get this solution, you have to understand the problem. And this problem, well, it starts deep, deep beneath our feet.
I want you to picture a car crash, but in super slow motion, one that's been going on for millions of years. That's what's happening with the Indian tectonic plate. It's just constantly ramming north right into the massive Eurasian plate. This colossal collision is exactly what pushed up the Himalayas, and it's also what builds up an unbelievable amount of stress in the Earth's crust. And that stress, eventually, it has to be released. And that release comes in the form of earthquakes. So, how in the world do you deal with a threat that's literally part of the foundation of your country? Well, you create a rule book, a national safety code that's designed to give every building a fighting chance. In India, that rulebook is called IS 1893. And as you can see from this timeline, this code is no dusty old book sitting on a shelf. It's a living, breathing document. It was first drafted way back in 1962, and it's been revised again and again, getting smarter as our understanding of seismic science grows. But this upcoming 2025 revision, that's not just an update, it's a complete revolution. Okay, to go any further, we need to get one key concept down pat: base shear. Just imagine an earthquake trying to just shove a building sideways right at its base. That total pushing force is the base shear. The entire point of this whole seismic code is to figure out what that force will be and then make damn sure the building is strong enough to push back. You know, tragically, the story of this code is really written in the rubble of past disasters. It turns out the biggest leaps forward in safety standards have almost always come right after the ground has shaken the hardest. And you can literally draw a straight line from these disasters to the changes. After the 1967 quake hit an area everyone thought was safe, scientists just got rid of the whole idea of a no-damage zone 0. Then, decades later, the 2001 Bhuj earthquake served as another massive wake-up call, and that led them to completely remap the country into fewer but much, much higher risk zones. And with every hard lesson learned, that formula for calculating base shear just got more and more sophisticated. It started out pretty simple, just looking at how flexible a building was. Then they added what kind of soil it's on. That matters a lot. Then how important the building is. A hospital needs to be way safer than a shed. Then they added performance factors. And finally, all the modern data we have on ground acceleration. Every single step added another crucial layer of realism to the whole thing. Which brings us to today, and to what is, without a doubt, the biggest evolution in the code's entire history. The 2025 revision isn't just another tweak, it's a fundamental change in how they think about risk. Okay, so here's the best way to think about it. The old way was what we call deterministic. It was like training for a boxing match, where you know your opponent is only going to throw one specific, giant haymaker. So you build your whole defense around that one punch. The new way, the probabilistic method, is like training for a real fight. You've analyzed the odds of every possible punch, jabs, hooks, uppercuts, and you're prepared for all of them. It's a much smarter, more comprehensive defense. The technical name for this new approach is PSHA, which stands for Probabilistic Seismic Hazard Assessment. Instead of just focusing on the single biggest possible earthquake, PSHA looks at the probability of all the different levels of shaking that could happen. By actually embracing uncertainty, it paints a much more realistic and robust picture of the actual threat. So what does this mean in the real world? Well, just look at these numbers for peak ground acceleration. That's basically how hard the ground is expected to shake. In a high-risk zone back in 1970, a building had to withstand 0.08 G. By 2025, that same requirement has shot up to 0.5 G. That is a staggering increase. Let's put that in a single, really powerful number. A building designed in 2025 in one of these high-risk zones has to be able to withstand forces 6.25 times higher than one built back in 1970. That is a monumental leap in safety standards.
But it's not just about building stronger, it's about being smarter, about where you build stronger. The old code said about 27% of India's land was high risk. The new 2025 code, with its much more advanced analysis, bumps that up to 36%. That means a much bigger chunk of the country is now correctly identified as needing the absolute highest level of protection.
So let's bring this all home. What do all these formulas, these zones, these probabilities, what do they actually mean for the real buildings we live and work in every single day? Well, the 2025 standard is a game changer. For one, buildings in a lot of areas are going to have to be designed to be up to 3.2 times stronger than before. It also brings in two separate safety goals. First is strength, which is all about preventing collapse and saving lives no matter what. The second is serviceability, which is about limiting damage during smaller, more frequent quakes. This whole new approach brings India's standards right up there with the best in the world, like in the US and Europe. This chart right here, it just says it all. This is for a typical 7-story building in a high-risk zone. You can see the steady climb and how strong it needed to be from 1984 to 2016. And then, look at that massive jump for the 2025 standard. This one visual tells the entire story of India's incredible journey towards seismic safety. So here's the bottom line. A brand new high-rise going up in Mumbai or Delhi under this 2025 code is engineered to a safety standard that was literally unimaginable just a generation ago. It's a fundamentally different, stronger, and most importantly, safer kind of building. But, and this is a big but, all this incredible progress for new buildings shines a bright light on a massive challenge. What about the millions of buildings that are already standing? This really highlights the urgent, critical need to go back and retrofit older structures that were built to much, much lower standards. And that really leaves us with one final, unavoidable question. The science of safety is always moving forward, always improving, ensuring the buildings of tomorrow are more resilient than ever before. But it also forces us to ask ourselves, is the building you're in right now actually designed for the earthquake of tomorrow?